My name is Alex. I learned long ago that the best way to survive was to become a ghost, to fade into the background until no one noticed you were there at all. In the group home, this was a skill I had perfected. I was just another number, another face, a shadow in the halls. The walls were painted a bland, sickly yellow. The air was a stagnant mixture of cleaning supplies and forgotten dinners, and the television was always on, a constant, low drone. When the Carters came, they didn't see me. They didn't see a child. They saw an object, a fresh subject for a very specific, and deeply disturbing, purpose. Mr. Carter was tall and gaunt, with an air of clinical superiority that felt like a permanent shield against genuine human emotion. His eyes, a pale gray, seemed to dissect you, searching for weaknesses. Mrs. Carter, his mirror image, had a smile that never quite reached her eyes, a polite mask over a cold, calculating mind. They chose me, not to be a son or even a foster child, but to be a live-in demonstration subject for their biological son, Mason. Mason was a boy born with an incredibly rare and dangerous genetic condition, congenital insensitivity to pain with anhidrosis, SIPA. He couldn't feel a sprained ankle, a broken bone, or a serious burn. He couldn't even sweat, which meant his body couldn't regulate its temperature. This lack of a pain response made him a curiosity to doctors and a challenge to his parents. The Carters explained my new role in the back seat of their perfectly clean SUV, the leather seats cold and unyielding against my skin. They spoke with a clinical, almost academic detachment, as if discussing a scientific experiment. Mr. Carter detailed Mason's condition in the precise language of a medical journal, while Mrs. Carter, in her perfectly coiffed hair and a business suit that seemed to have no wrinkles, outlined my duties. My job was to be the living, breathing textbook of pain, to show Mason what he could not feel. I was to be a subject in a morbid, human experiment, a prop in their desperate attempt to cure their son's affliction. The first month in their pristine, sterile home was a slow, agonizing descent. The house itself felt less like a home and more like a museum of perfectly curated silence. The walls were a cool, sterile white. The furniture was sleek and minimalist, positioned just so, as if a single displaced cushion would be an unforgivable sin. There were no photographs on the walls, no scattered books, no warmth of any kind. I was given a room that felt like a holding cell, with a single bed, a small closet, and a desk. The lessons were scheduled, a part of my daily routine like chores. They started small, almost benign. Mrs. Carter, her face a placid mask of professionalism, would hand me a thumbtack and instruct me to press it into my palm just enough to draw a drop of blood. Mr. Carter would hold a lit match and tell me to briefly place my fingertip near the flame, the smell of burning skin clinging to the air for a moment. After each lesson, I would be sent back to my room. My hands would be bandaged, but the wounds were more than physical. The sting of the paper cuts and the raw ache of the burns were nothing compared to the emptiness in Mason's eyes, the disquieting lack of a reaction that left me feeling like a ghost, even in my own body. He would follow me, a silent shadow, and watch me. I would see him later, in the living room, touching the small red mark on his arm with the same detached curiosity he'd shown while watching my pain. "Does it feel like this now?" he'd ask, his voice a quiet murmur. I would shake my head, unable to explain that the pain was not a static thing, but a sharp, undeniable signal to pull back, to stop. It was clear their plan was failing. Mason's mind was a biological wall they couldn't breach. They were trying to teach a doll to cry, to feel, to be human. I found refuge from this nightmare in my schoolwork, burying my head in books and dreaming of a future that felt a world away from the Carters' cold mansion. My small act of rebellion and mental escape led to an accidental discovery. In the mahogany desk Mrs. Carter had designated as my study station, I found a hidden compartment. It was so well hidden that I only found it by chance, my hand brushing against a loose panel in a moment of frustration. My heart pounded as I used a paperclip to pry open the false bottom. Inside were not cash or jewelry, but a series of encrypted hard drives, each labeled with dates spanning several years. My breath caught in my throat. It took me a week of late-night hours, using my school computer and a borrowed coding book, to crack the first one. The first video that played showed a little boy, no older than 7, flinching as a hot iron was held close to his hand. The log below the video described the child's reaction in unsettlingly precise, clinical detail. I felt bile rise in my throat. This was not about Mason. This was a premeditated plan of abuse, a twisted experiment to see how far they could push children. I watched another video, then another, each one more chilling than the last. The names and faces changed, but the vacant, terrified look in the children's eyes was always the same. They were not just demonstrations, they were a succession of discarded tools. A meticulous archive of their cruelty. The discovery changed me. I was no longer a subject. I was a witness. My curriculum for Mason changed overnight. Instead of demonstrating physical pain, I began talking to him about empathy and consequences. I explained what it meant to bruise someone's heart, not just their skin. I talked to him about the emotional weight of my past, the ache of being abandoned, the constant fear of not being enough, the anxiety that now consumed my days. I told him stories from my life, from the group home, and from the people I had met. I was no longer an object to be studied. I was a person with a history and a future. Mason started asking new questions. Not what does it feel like, but why did they do that to you? He started to see me as a person, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of empathy in his eyes. We became a team, the two of us, plotting our escape. My nightly ritual became downloading the Carter's files and documenting my own abuse. Mason, in turn, started his own manifesto, a child's sprawling notebook filled with his observations of their behavior and his growing awareness of the abuse. When we had enough, we created legal documents to file for emancipation. The Carters came home from a trip a few days early. They found us in the living room, a stack of papers and a laptop between us. They charged at me, enraged. But for the first time, Mason stepped in front of me. "Stop," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "We're leaving." He held up his manifesto, and in that moment, I knew he was no longer a child in need of a teacher, but a boy fighting for his freedom. The emancipation hearing was a long, brutal process. Our lawyer, a formidable woman named Ms. Vasquez, took our case pro bono. "These people," she said, her voice sharp and low, "are not just abusers. They are methodical. We have to show the court that this was a pattern, not an isolated incident." The Carter's lawyers tried to paint us as disturbed children fabricating a story. They brought up my history in the foster system, suggesting I was prone to dramatic outbursts, and they focused on Mason's condition, arguing that his lack of sensation meant he was not a reliable witness. But our evidence was overwhelming. We had the incriminating files and the detailed logs, a meticulous record of their crimes. We presented the digital documents, a parade of cruelty documented in their own cold, academic language. The courtroom was a sterile, unforgiving space. I sat beside Mason, my hand gripping his under the table. The Carters sat across from us, their faces a mask of feigned concern and outrage. When I was called to the stand, my voice shook at first, but as I spoke, a strange calm settled over me. I detailed the lessons, the paper cuts and the burns, the cold detachment in their eyes. I talked about the discovery of the hidden drives and the videos of the other children. A woman in the back row, a former foster child named Maya, started to cry. She was one of the faces I'd seen in the videos. My words gave her the courage to stand up and speak. One by one, more faces from the videos came forward, a silent army of children the Carters had used. The weight of their combined testimonies was enough. The Carters' carefully constructed facade crumbled. The judge's face, initially skeptical, hardened with a quiet fury. The judge granted Mason full independence and put a permanent injunction in place, barring the Carters from ever fostering another child. Our victory was a silent, tear-filled moment of catharsis for all of us in the courtroom. We had not just won, we had exposed them. The Carters didn't give up. They harassed us, left us threatening messages, and tried to discredit us online. They used their money to spread lies, painting us as ungrateful and manipulative. But we had each other and the small network of survivors we had connected with. We turned our trauma into resilience. We created a support group for foster youth, sharing our stories and finding solace in our shared journey. We were no longer defined by what the Carters had done to us, but by what we had built together. Years later, Mason is an advocate for foster youth and a medical researcher specializing in CPA. I'm a social worker, dedicating my life to helping other kids find safe and stable homes. Our fellow survivors are thriving too, pursuing careers in law, psychology, and education. We have all transformed our pain into purpose, creating a new family out of the ashes of abuse. The Carters, their empire of lies and pain exposed, are a distant, faded memory. We did not just survive them, we found a way to truly live beyond the trauma.